In other news now, the country's ailing economy continues to be a major concern. Youth Capital says we cannot expect young people's economic productivity to grow if our economy itself is not growing. It's calling for stronger support for small businesses. To discuss this further, we are joined by Crystal Duncan from Youth Capital. Crystal, good afternoon and welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time. You know, when you consider, according to the latest stats available, that the youth unemployment rate in South Africa is just under 60%. I mean, it's more than 55% from 2013 until 2023. And currently, it does not look like there's any way it's going to improve. It really makes it difficult to imagine how you're going to make young people productive.
Absolutely, Dan. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs when 6 in 10 people between the ages of 15 and 24 are unemployed, according to the latest stats just released this week. The saddest part for me, having been doing this work for a number of years now, is that those numbers have been stagnant. You know, we can talk about COVID and its effects, but the truth is we've kind of been at that really high level of youth unemployment for well over a decade now. And I think at the root of the problem is a lack of coordinated and complex answers to the crisis of youth unemployment. There's no silver bullet. Entrepreneurship on its own won't solve our crisis. You know, educating young people is not going to solve our crisis. We need to look at all of the layers and the complexities that young people face. A report that we released last week shows that 8 in 10 young people have to choose between looking for work or putting food on the table. You know, that's the reality for young people. And then, you know, as you just heard from the guests you had on before, you have businesses who are saying we can't keep the lights on. We can't afford to keep the lights on because, you know, generators are costing us too much. And now you're asking us to hire young people. And so it's a complex problem. And we need economic growth so we can stimulate businesses so business can be able to hire young people. And the other end of it, we need to say, what are the barriers that young people face to entering the labor market? A lack of work experience, a lack of social connections, and just basically a lack of money to even go out and look for work. And unless we address all of these things, we're not going to be able to tackle the crisis, and we're going to continue to see those numbers to rise, sadly.
Yeah, the outlook is pretty much dark, because while you have this level of joblessness, it doesn't, help to think that there are also many young graduates who are not finding meaningful employment in the midst of it all. Then you got a huge sized chunk of them who are not in education, not in employment, nor in training.
Yeah, our latest calculations, again, with these, with the numbers that just came out this week, you know, again, we're still sitting at 9 million young people not in education, employment, or training. You could fill the F&B stadium, you know, 90 times with those young people. And so I was asked earlier today, how do you keep hope in these situations? But there are little flickers of hope. You know, Youth Capital has been backing the Basic Education Employment Initiative quite hard over the last few months, and we are somewhat relieved to hear that it's got some funding for another year. Ideally, we would have liked to see funding for 3 years to provide some stability there. But, you know, where else do you see a government program that created over 100,000 opportunities for young people in a day? You know, took on over 100,000 young people across corners of the country where there's no economic opportunity, put some money in there, you know, where they helped learners to read and write, a huge crisis again. We see from research that money goes back into communities, stimulates the retail market in township economies. And so, you know, these programs give me a little bit of hope that there is a way out of it and that it can be done. What we do need to do is do a serious kind of audit on the programs that exist and the money that's spent. And what are we getting as a return on our investment? Let's get rid of the things that aren't working and focus our money on the things that are.
You know, Chris, I'm thinking what will work, because in the budget speech, the minister there on Wednesday announcing, I don't know how many billions, I don't know the figure in my head, you might help me out here, apologies for that, but it's more billions into the youth employment program, that YES program.
Yes.
And we don't get a sense that they're creating sustainable jobs either.
Yeah, so the package that was announced was 7.4 billion for what they term presidential youth intervention. So that includes the National Youth Service, includes the Presidential Employment Stimulus, which includes the program I just mentioned, the Basic Education Employment Initiative, and the Social Employment Fund. So it's really all lumped together, and we actually, through consultants of ours, in discussion with National Treasury to unpack there was a headline number of 61 billion to create jobs, and then the 7.4 billion of that was for the programs that we say are working well. So we have questions around, the other 50 odd billion, what is happening there? Exactly to your point, people always say there's no money. I always say I don't think there's a lack of money. I think there's a lack of coordination and a measure of impact for the money spent.
Yeah, the impact.
And if we did a real...
because the impact could give us sustainability. Because creating a 1 year long job opportunity for a youngster is not going to help. What happens after 1 year? Who will absorb that? Who will absorb that resource? There's no guarantee the resource will be absorbed. We need to employ that financial resource in a way that help us to make sure that that young person will get a job, they will stay in the job, they will grow in the job, opening up a space for another young person to come along.
Yeah, and so we speak about a basket of solutions at Youth Capital, really looking at a layered approach. So at a minimum, you have short-term public employment programs, gives young people a foot in the door, a first work experience, and a social network, which they didn't have access to, which should help them into a next opportunity. Now, if those public employment programs are not capacitated well, that young people learn transferable skills, that they're not recognized as real work experience by employers, then those programs are for naught. So say we get that right. The next step is that young people step out, they use the money from the program either to support their hustle into a full-time entrepreneurship opportunity, or they step out into a formal employment opportunity or further study. And so we have to get all these layers right. Otherwise, you say we give young people hope and they step back into nothingness at the end of that, whether that's graduate unemployment or short-term work opportunity.
Yeah, from your experience, I know what economists say, but as Youth Capital, which is a sector that creates the most jobs in terms of being able to absorb and keep and grow? Is it the small business sector? Is it the medium business sector? Is it big business?
Well, I don't know in terms of raw numbers what I would say creates the most jobs, but what we've been pushing for some time at Youth Capital is that small and medium businesses are a missed opportunity. I think that if certain things like the employment tax incentive and the BBBE rating, to things like the YES program were a little bit easier for small businesses to access, they might be able to create more work opportunities for young people. And that's not to say that a small business is expected to hire a young person, forever. We know that small businesses demand comes and goes, you have good days and bad days, but I think incentive young people to learn about what it's like to run small businesses. We're always telling young people, be entrepreneurs, there's no job, be an entrepreneur. But young people have never worked a day in their life, and then you expect them to run a small business. And so I really see small and medium businesses, both formal and the informal sector. And again, the informal sector is not very well supported. It's overly regulated compared to other African countries. But, if we can support those businesses to give young people a foot in the door, then I think we'd really get some untapped work potential. The bigger corporates can come on board with many opportunities for creating employment for young people, and that's great. But I think we've kind of reached the ceiling there of what is possible. I think what is untapped is the SMME space.
So, in a nutshell, from Youth Capital's perspective, what is the outlook? Is it grim? Is it hopeful?
I am always hopeful. I think because of working with young people, because of the energy I see with young people, I am still hopeful. But I think our time for turning the ship around is getting short. I think we need to be bold, we need to be innovative, we need to act quickly, and governments need to leave a little bit of their siloed approach behind and work across departments to get that layering right and that scaffolding right.
If the time is running out, we're sitting on a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, and a missed opportunity for a generation of young people whose skills and talents the country will never benefit from because we can't get them into the labour market.
Crystal Duncan, thank you very much for your time, insights as well, and information shared here. She's from Youth Capital. We're going to go for a short break now here on Today, and when we come back, there'll be more news for you. Stay with us.